basically, when you learn something,
Hey.
the rate at which you forget it is going to be dependent upon how much the thing that you're doing is reinforced or reused. So you're probably never going to forget your phone number ever again, right? But you learn some random fact and you're going to forget it in 3 days if you don't use it. So the rate at which we forget things follows like a function, it's a forgetting curve. So spaced repetition is the idea is that if I can give you a dose of the thing that you want to know right before you forget it, that's like the optimal time to give you the dose.
Oh, very excited to have you back, Chris. It's been, I think, a couple of years since we've had you chatting about everything options and trading. But and because of that, I think it would be wise for us to get a bit of an update, just what you've done in your career, and also what you've been doing recently with your writings and your social media profile. Can you just give us a quick run through?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's always a lot of fun for me to talk to you guys. Yeah, so over the last, so the big, well, first of all, for people don't know me already, like I was a professional options trader for 21 years, started at SIG, spent 8 years there as a market maker, focused on equity options and then commodity options, and then had my own market making group. But I had a backer in Chicago, which is a thing floor traders tend to do. And so I ran that business for about 3.5 years and built that up to a small group. We were about five of us. And then after that, I went to Parallax in San Francisco, which is a relative value vol fund. And I spent close to a decade there, built out the commodity vol trading business there. And then I left the daily grind in 2021 and mostly focusing on uh, writing and dadding. And the other thing I'm like, in the past year, actually a big thing that's taking up a lot of my time now is Moontower.ai, which is a uh, options analytics software where, yeah, we're just trying to, I'm bringing, I mean, it's a lot of stuff that I kind of like thought of. There was really like the transition kind of way of seeing the world between when I was a floor trader, which is a much more market maker oriented kind of role, to a upstairs relative value vol trader, which is a much more of a what you call a position trader. Um, the genesis of that transition was really the kinds of analytics that we're creating at Moontower AI.
Awesome, awesome. So, and for anybody that wants to get deep into the nerdy stuff with Chris on the options side, the first episode that we covered did a lot of that. I actually wanted to bring you in here because I've been reading a lot about. You said you're dadding a lot, and that is, I think, the toughest job in trying to figure out what's actually signal and noise and what's best for your kids. And you've been writing a lot about education and your kids. So let's start with that. Let's start. You had a recent post where you mentioned the concept of option value in education for your kids. First, can you kind of describe what you mean by option value? And then can you talk a little bit about the academic excellence in your children and allowing them the freedom to explore their own interests, kind of that concept that you discussed?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing for me with um with kids is I mostly just want them to feel I want them to feel like it's a very heavily used term, but like their own agent, right? You want them to sort of author their own life in a way. And you want them to have a lot of choices. And I think I think a lot of parents are very aware of this idea. It's why you put your kids in like, hey, try this sport out and, let's go try this math thing, or maybe try some coding, or maybe you want to just get into whatever hobby it is and discover, and you're just really trying to figure out what they're into, and then figuring that you're going to lean into that a little bit further as they get older. Because I think that, I mean, I had the belief that depth is intrinsically rewarding. It's very to go deep into things uh, is empowering, it's rewarding, and I kind of orient everything towards um, really that idea of flow. Like, how do you just do the thing you want to be doing? And of course, at some point you're going to need to make a living, but I think that you'll tend to go further if you're doing something that you really love in the, and that thing is also aligned with your talents. And so what is, uh, you spend the first 20 years of your life, hopefully discovering, learning about yourself, like figuring out what am I actually good at and what do I like. Um, and the further you get along on that while you're younger, the better. I think the better it is. Where I think that a lot of adults are going through that too. It would just be easier if it happened earlier. There's nothing wrong with finding out later, late blooming, and all that stuff. In a lot of ways, I think of myself as a sort of late bloomer. Um, I I was the kind of person that could have just incinerated time playing video games or whatever and not felt really kinda guilty about it in any way, and I don't really appreciate that about myself, and I actually changed at when I had kids, and so I feel like, um, I'm a lot happier if I'm sort of, like, being productive and moving forward, and, uh, regret sort of, like, empty calorie activities. That's probably revealing my own insecurities. I don't know. But in any case, I think about my kids as sort of like, hey, how can we get you to a place where you can understand the value of being competent and empowered by that, and hopefully make choices later on that are not driven by senses of scarcity or, oh, I just got to go make money or whatever, and maybe uh, box yourself in too much. So yeah, the option value stuff is just, it's nothing formal. It's just stuff I think that a lot of parents just intuitively get. Expose them to stuff and let them see what they like. And nothing makes a parent happier than watching their kid sort of excel and, being able to get better at something. It was like my proudest moments are like when you see your kid like learn how to swim. It's just like an insane moment. It's like, oh, you couldn't do that, and now you can do that, and they're so proud of themselves. And then if you just take that and just amplify it across all the things that they end up doing, that makes you really happy, and that's a great guide for like what I actually think you should orient yourself towards.
But these are 2 there's 2 extremes, right? There's the option value of saying, "Hey, you should try as much as you want. You should explore, how you feel about different things, do as many sports as you can until you find something you're good at." But then there's the real gravity of the modern educational system and this fear, and Adam and I have had this discussion over and over again, where I think my view is one of, I'm happy to take the risk of exploration to the detriment of academic excellence, and Adam's view is the risk is too high still. So you're better off just keeping them in school in the traditional way because that's what's going to get them set up for life, and then they can explore later. Maybe I'm misconstruing specifically what Adam said, but I think the big fear right now for parents and providing option value for the kids is pulling them away from the school system. And I struggle with that right now currently because they come home exhausted, and there's just very little energy left to explore other things outside of that very industrialized school system. So how do you think about balancing, they have to be good at maps testing,
Hmm.
but they also need to.
Yeah. So I would say part of it is I haven't been hit in the face too hard with that situation because so my kids are 8 and 11, so they're third grade and sixth grade, and uh, you know, I so on the one hand, as a parent, you're looking at your kid and you're saying, well, they have their own idiosyncrasies. You unwrap that box and you're like, I didn't know what I was going to get here. And it's like I have one kid that reminds me of me, and I have another. So the kid that reminds me of me is, um, he's good at school. He kind of, but he's also a bit ambivalent. Like I just didn't, I didn't. First of all, I really disliked school growing up. It was a chore to go to it. I don't think he actually feels that way, but he's pretty ambivalent about it. But he happens to be good at it. The younger one is competitive, and like he wants to. He's in a split class. He's like a third grader in a class with fourth graders, and whatever the fourth graders do, he wants to outdo them, and he wants to do what the fifth graders do. It's like he's just super competitive that way. So I can tell that I've got like one kid that's like very, um, he's going to be self motivated to just win, which is the way my sister was growing up. And I was just, what do I need to do to just get the A so my parents get off my back? Was my attitude. I think my older kid recognizes that, and this is, maybe this is harsh, but like, we're kind of like, look, you go to public school. This is for everybody. You better get all A's. Like, it's just, there's just no, we don't really mince words about this. It's like, my wife is Asian. It's like, this is just how it's going to be. Like, so, and I say that because I know that they're capable, right? I would not feel that, like, if you had there was something about them that said like, oh, they have something where this is an extreme burden for them to get A's. I would not feel that way. I would adapt to them. But in their case, they're completely capable. So you got to do good in school. But I tell them, so that's the bare minimum because this is sort of made for everybody. And you're going to need to go beyond that. And that comes from, and I don't say this in these words, but it's my feeling is you probably want to have an interesting above average sort of like existence growing up. I mean, or at least that's just, again, just reflecting my own insecurities. Like I wanted, when I was younger, I knew that I wanted to make a lot of money one day because I wanted to escape the kind of existence that I had growing up. So maybe that's just me imparting that into them. But I think school, doing good in school, that's the bare minimum. Now I haven't gotten to the point where it's high school level pressures. And I know that there are kids doing 4 hours of homework a night and all that stuff here. And I'm pretty much taking uh, a a default view of like, you're gonna need to get all A's when you go to high school, but we're gonna see what it comes to when we get there. The uh, I'm a lot more interested in them caring, finding something they care about. Nothing would worry me more, or I shouldn't say that, but like, I would be more worried about them not finding something that they really enjoyed and thought that they were really good at. That would be more of concerning to me. So if my kid turns out like he loves writing, for example, and he's really leaning into that and he's doing that compulsively, and maybe school isn't his absolute top priority, but I see that the level of commitment that he has to this other thing is special. That would sort of like make up in my mind. And that's what I think right now. Again, I don't know how I'm going to feel in 4 years when he's in 10th grade. But that's my feeling right now is that I would be okay with that. Um, I mostly just wanna see them able to get from A to B, be productive, and, and be effective.
I've met I've met some kids, a small number of kids, just through my people I know, parents I know, and have known through the years who don't do so well in school. You know, that they might be sort of CD students, like really just not well suited to traditional classrooms, but with either really special gifts in certain areas or extreme passions in certain areas where they're just like they're spending all their spare time learning about doing, building things. And I think when you have a child like that, it's clear, like there's no ambiguity. And you know, I'm sympathetic to the view that every child may be like that, but they just haven't been exposed to the activity that captures their imagination and draws them in, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I do think most kids don't find that, at least in um, middle school and in high school. And so, if you haven't and you don't have the high enough marks to get into schools that will provide them with options for at least more traditional paths in the early stages, maybe they'll discover something that they're very passionate about that's a little bit non-traditional in their 20s or maybe in their 30s, you know? But the clock does tick a little bit. And so I do feel like not having a university education, a reasonably good school, even if it's a reasonably good state school, um, definitely from an option standpoint, you are truncating that tree of possibilities of your own life. By the same token, I'm also sympathetic to the view that whereas I think all of us can say that when we grew up, um, even though maybe none of us wanted to be in a traditional kind of professional role, let's say we didn't grow up, the three of us saying, I really want to be an accountant, or I really want to be a lawyer, or I really want to be a physician, or what have you, right? We all knew that if things really, or a teacher, whatever, right? We all knew that if we didn't really find anything that we loved or that we really wanted to build on or what have you, then we could go into one of those professions and still live a good middle class life, have a family, own a home, et cetera. Right. And what I think is really different now for a few reasons is that I don't think that those traditional professional roles, when our kids graduate, my kids are a little older than yours, call it by sort of 5 or 6 years.
Mhm.
But when they graduate, those fallbacks are not really going to exist because many of the professional jobs will be obviated by, automation, AI tools, et cetera. Um, and because it's just much more expensive to kind of climb onto the middle class. You kind of need to be exceptional in terms of the income that you're able to earn in order to climb into the middle class and have a family, like a traditional middle class family life, like we all kind of, imagined it when we were growing up, right? So let me throw that out there. Like my kids are a little older. I've also thought about this quite a bit. My kids are all very different from each other in personality. This is kind of how I see things.
So first of all, on the you kind of mentioned the option value sort of the education. Like so first of all, I think it's real of like university. I think it's really valuable. Like the whole idea of because you nailed it. I mean, most kids don't find themselves in like 10th grade being like, I know I'm going to play the saxophone. Like this is my calling. Like they most people just don't know what it is. So uh university is sort of an extension of that discovery period and also in ways that are, like for me, actually, I grew up in a, sort of a blue collar town in central New Jersey. Going to college was just, uh, totally mind expanding as far as I met all these people that thought completely differently than where I grew up. My college experience is way more diverse than the atmosphere I kind of grew up in. And, um, I also wasted a ton of time in college. I don't know anything that I learned there actually out of a book. But I'm super close with all these people from college. It was so valuable as far as the experience of who I met that it was worth every cent and more just from the people that I met. So that is, I think is like a an important aspect of the like if you think about college as a sort of good bundle of things that you can get, it's actually the people to me, at least for me, that was the highest value of it. So uh as far as like the thing that you're going to do, like you're saying, like you're worried about uh I mean, it sounds like a little bit of like this existential worry about like automation basically almost like a I don't want to say like a universal basic income thing, but it's that sort of like feeling behind it is like, my God, like what's gonna happen to all the jobs? And um I don't I mean, I have no real forecast or anything like that. I think of this as a bit of a positional scarcity thing where like humans are sort of they're or on multiple axes, we're sort of like organized in terms of like capability. Like you have talent, you have the ability to whatever talent means to you, whether it's intelligence, whether it's the ability to communicate, whether it's executive functioning, like you're just conscientious, you're able to get stuff done. Um, that mapping between sort of talent on whatever, however way you want to define it, and like your outcomes, it it's not, obviously there's a lot of looseness in that relationship, but there is a relationship there, I think. And I think that it holds no matter what the future holds. It's like it's just maybe the whole bar, maybe like fine, like we've automated all these things, but what's left is you still got a whole bunch of people and they're going to reorder that, or they're going to reorganize themselves across talents. And being very talented is still gonna matter. And what the shape of that, or what the, expression of that looks like, I have no idea. I mean, it may, I always think to myself, like, yeah, I feel fortunate to be born into a time and place where, I feel very comfortable with abstract ideas. Well, that's sort of rewarding today. If you can read, write, and do arithmetic, that's very valuable. If I was born in Sparta, I'm probably out of luck.
Right.
So, uh, so maybe the future will be so extreme that it would be so extreme that, brawn mattered more than brains or something like that. Um, uh, in that case, yeah, then maybe what I'm saying is, doesn't really apply. But I really think that ultimately, if you're, if you're very capable, you're probably gonna be capable wherever, and maybe that's how I'm thinking about my kids, is like, I just need you to figure out that you can be capable, like, if you set out to do something, you can get it done, and you know what it means to, like, put your head down and work, because I don't know what the future holds, but I'm pretty sure that's gonna matter no matter what the future
So,
is.
actually think this is an important point of distinction for me because I think the educational school system today teaches people to put their head down and work. I mean, that's a type of person, and if they like it and they can do it and they can follow instruction, then school's pretty good for them. They enjoy it. It's the abstract thinker that has an issue with the school system, right? I actually think that one of the key values of AI today is it has the ability to completely change the way that we structure the school day for everybody and the different types of personalities, right? Um, if The way I see the future is more of the abstract thinker is going to be the one that's going to be able to adapt best and provide value beyond what the AI can provide in order to create a better life for themselves and better society and so on. So, I mean, let's talk about some of the tools that we're seeing right now. You talk about the kind of AI tools that you've been adding into your life, into your children's life, and you talk about the flywheel of competence, confidence, and motivation using these AI tools. I feel like they're compressing the amount of time is needed in order to get to the same level of education for kids, leaving one presumes a lot of time for ideation, creativity, critical thinking, and kind of abstract thinking. So, just walk us through what you've seen with your personal experience in using AI with your kids and kind of shifting that learning curve.
Yeah, so I think it's mostly, I feel like it's mostly about rate. Like, you're just able to learn more faster, but I don't think, like, for example, my, the 11-year-old is, he plays this video game called Rocket League, which is it's competitive, it's car soccer he plays it on Xbox. And, we kinda we told him, as we always tell him, "Listen," like I said, he can kinda be ambivalent. The only, like, thing he really, really cares about is playing basketball. So, he plays a lot of basketball on a lot of teams. But, like, we're like, outside of that, for enrichment, there's gotta be something you're gonna do. And if you don't decide what you wanna do, we're just gonna pick for you. So, you may wanna step up here. So, the thing he came to us with is, he said, "I got an idea. How about this? I wanna make bots in Rocket League, in the game." And so we went on YouTube, and so first of all, like, he went on YouTube actually, and he found, how to make bots, and you were gonna need to use this thing called Python, and you were gonna need to put in this library called RL bots, and then he used ChatGPT. And the thing is, like, basically did this all on his own. And all I'm thinking to myself is, oh, good. He knows how to be resourceful. Like that's
Right. Yeah.
like, as far as I'm concerned, that
Total.
like my demands aren't that high. It's just like, show me that you can be resourceful and that you just don't like stare at blank screens. Like, hey, I don't know how to go from A to B. And I just think of all these tools like increase your learning rate. And but you still need to have the will to get through it. It's just you're just gonna be learning more at every unit time. But you still need to do it.
Yeah,
You
but the
still
difference I think is I totally agree. Again, going back to the traditional education system, in the one case, you're being told exactly what you need to learn at all time. And in the other case, you're telling your kid, "Hey, with your free time, figure it out."
yeah.
And so the question is, how like for me, the AI tools that I'm teaching my kids to use are allowing them to get their work and their homework done faster so that they can go and what I believe to be the most valuable thing is, what your son is doing with the bots and being
Right.
resourceful and figuring out a business and all that stuff, right? So, that's where my interest lies in is the use of AI tools in order to free up that time for the kids. So and
Now,
so
what if he didn't come up with something that he was keen to do and learn?
Well, we would have
What
just
what
stuck we just would have stuck him in a program. We would have been like, "You know what? You're going into I mean, you're gonna go do this." Something that, like, is something that I know that he kind of enjoys, but he
Right.
didn't volunteer it, right? Like, he's done, like, a code school before. And that's kind of the way it's like I said, he reminds me of me. Like, these are the kinds of things that I liked. He likes to be in front of a screen, and so that I would have, like, oriented him that way because the outside of this is, like, all outside sports. I mean, he does sports all year round. I'm just talking about the stuff that I care about, but, like, outside of sport. And, uh, or we'll do things like, my wife is big on, like, trying to help them be better communicators, be better speakers. So we will bring in, teachers that help. We have one teacher in particular, like, we bring her in and she helps them uh, be better communicators and be able to articulate ideas, get their idea. Like, they made a little movie over the summer with their cousins. We do this thing every summer called Cousins Camp, and the 8 kids all come to our house, and I take them to the art studio where this teacher works, and they like work on a project all week
Mm,
together, and then they spend their afternoons swimming and living like they're in the 1950s. So the the but that is very conscious on our part. Like, we want them to have that. We want them to be very strong interpersonally and be better communicators. I wish I had that growing up. I feel like I've spent my adult life learning from my wife how to just be a better human being in a lot of ways. So, uh, so that's part of it as well, is like just things that we didn't know about that are good to know, that are useful. We're trying to put it in front of them. Had he had he been I would have wanted to do that no matter what, but if he was obsessed with playing the electric guitar and he wants to go down that rabbit hole, I would've been like, "Fine, that's fine." But you just have to do something. You have to care. Um, and I understand you may not care, but then I can't let you fill up your time with nothing. You can't just play video games all week long. So, which is I don't think I'm saying anything there. I think every parent sort of feels like that. So it's just I mean, everybody's just dealing with their kids trying to get them off the thing that they feel is unproductive because
But
you're
the,
trying to
the
get
kernel, the kernel right for me was, what were you most proud about when he said, "Well, I want to build bots"? It was that resilience. It was the self-directed curiosity, right? It was, okay, fine. What I really want to do is sit in front of the computer and just play the video games. But if pressed, this actually sounds kind of cool, and I'm going to go do it. And then when he got a little nudge, he ran with it, right?
yeah,
And he learned how to do a bunch of the things on his own and get the most out of, like, install. the Python IDE and figure out with ChatGPT how to do that, and then how to begin to code with the RL bot library or what have you. Like, it was this self-starter nature after the little nudge that was the kernel there, right? If the kid was like, "Yeah, man, I don't know. There's nothing really," and you throw out a couple of ideas. "Well, you're really into this. Do you wanna well, no, not really." "Well, what about them?" "No, not really, no." So then you're like, "Okay, well, we're gonna put you in math camp, right,
Yeah.
instead," right? So now you're just kinda like, "Okay, well, you're just not gonna sit in front of the computer," right? Like, my kids swim. Swimming is a huge commitment of time,
Yeah.
right? Uh, if they had expressed a massive burning passion to go and do something else other than swim, then I would have been delighted for them to go do something else. But they didn't. I mean, they all tried different sports, at school and this and that, whatever. Some of them enjoyed them, some of them didn't, whatever. But there was never like a huge burning passion. And still to this day, there's not really. And I agree. Like, I think anybody like the three of us who are kind of naturally curious and love to go learn new things and try new things, I think the future is made for it's a lot easier for people like that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
worry about those who, you know, I don't think most people are like that.
well,
So I
the
I
question is
fear
how
it
much of
coming
that
out of
is
the gate.
innate and how much can you teach? Can you teach people to be curious?
So
And
so
are
I
we sucking the curiosity out of the kids in the way that
I think with probably some of that, sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but I did want to take a quick second to remind listeners that while we do absolutely love providing our audience with world class guests and weekly investment insights, we wanted to remind you that we actually do our best work outside of this podcast. And we try to do this by providing cutting edge, globally diversified, and systematic investment strategies that are designed to be broadly non correlated to traditional equity and bond portfolios. So we actually manage private and public funds, as well as bespoke, separately managed accounts for investors that seek the potential to smooth out portfolio returns in the long run. So if you do want to see that theory that we've been talking about put into practice, please do go ahead and check us out at investorsolve.com. Now back to the podcast.
I would I'm a little less concerned about this because, um, it it's great if the person shows that curiosity and they chase something down, but the reality is, like, I actually wasn't like that growing up. I didn't really, um even, like, getting into options trading, I mean, it's just like a historical accident for me. I mean, it's just I had an idea that I wanted to go into trading. I didn't have strong ideas about it. I was just like, "I think I wanna go into trading." Honestly, my whole attitude was, "I don't wanna work that hard." iBankers work lots of hours, and trading is this thing where, like, the floor is only open from, like, this time to this time. It seemed like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, you just work for, like, 8 hours a day, and I hear you make a lot of money like that. Like, and then what happens is, like, you get good at something, and then you grow to like it. And I just have a lot of faith in that process that, like, you get good at something and then you get all kinds of, great feedback loops from the world. The world says, "Oh, well, this is useful and you're able to do, useful things with that, and you'll grow to like it." And was I born to be an options trader? No. I mean, I thought I was gonna, at one point I thought I was gonna be a psychologist. It's not like it just so happened.
And we followed such a similar path.
The
But
uh,
if you were to take a cross section of your average 40 or 50-year-old today,
yeah.
do you think that they would connect with that? Like, yeah, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And then I kind of stumbled into something and then I grew really good at it. And then it became a profession. And then I became like super good at it. And now I teach others how to do it. Like, I think my impression, and look, I could be wrong. My impression is the vast majority of people are kind of like, yeah, I got a job because I needed to pay the rent. And I did the minimum needed to not get fired, and that minimum meant that I was able to raise my salary over time a bit, and, like, I I I don't know, I would be curious
Mhm.
for what percentage of the population your story, which is very similar to mine, I suspect to Rodrigo's, knowing Rodrigo's story, um, whether they would connect to that or whether they would be like, "Yeah, no, that's not it at all for me."
Again, I think everything that you said, by the way, resonates with me. You know, Scott Galloway, the professor, I think is a Stanford professor of marketing. Like his big thing is don't follow your passion. That's fucking nonsense. That does not work, right? Like it is this idea of following your passion for being what everybody wants to be now as an influencer, be in Hollywood. You know, few people make money. Like what you need to do is follow your level of competency. Like,
Mhm.
sniff that out, see what you're good at, and then get really good at it, and then you'll because you're good at it, it feels good, and you will be passionate about that thing and make a lot of money. So I think that's kinda where we all landed, right? Like, I didn't same like you, Chris. I remember sitting in my last year of high school, and, the counselor said, "So what university are you going to?" I don't know. What do you think?" "Well, what are you good at?" "Well, I'm good at math." And so, "Well, maybe commerce." "That sounds good to me." You know, like,
Right.
I literally just fell into almost everything that I've done and become competent over time because I was curious. But I do wonder all the time been if I had more time. So university, you mentioned how it was a time of exploration, or you just met a bunch of people. You got to know kind of who you were. W- High school and elementary school is less of that. It's more, again, stringent. You have to, all your hours are accounted for. And so I do wonder what happens with like some of the AI platforms that I'd like you to actually talk quickly about the Math Academy. My kid uses
Oh, yeah.
Cadmigo, the new chatbot
Yeah.
with Khan Academy that actually doesn't give you the answers, but helps you think about those answers. Because if we can leverage that, and some of schools are leveraging that, I think you can get more people at the margins to be like us. I personally think. So tell us about some of the tech that you're using with the.
Yeah. So I've been using this. I wrote about this recently. I discovered this thing, this program called Math Academy, uh, which is, um, so okay. So if we back up a little bit, there was a big article like in the Washington Post years ago, right around probably around 2019, 2020, about this program that was going on in this school in Pasadena. And there was this couple there that was it was a couple. They're both math educators. Actually one of them I think was before that was at Uber. He was an early Uber employee, and I think he worked on like the algorithm that matched the driver to the user. But anyway, they're math people by background, and they'd created this program in Pasadena, which the short of it is this: they took sixth graders and had them take Calc BC by eighth grade, and they were getting fours and fives on the AP exam. And the sixth graders that they took, these were, and uh, I chat with the architect of the Math Academy program, and so kind of asked him like, "Hey, tell me a little bit more about that." And he explained to me, it wasn't like we went and got all these people that were, top one basis point of the population. He says we just went into the public that we were at the public school, and we just took he said the equivalent of like the top half of an honors class. So maybe like your top 5% of kids in math in school, and said, we're going to try to see if we can do this. And they ran they did this program, and they were very, very successful with it. And the great thing about that was that now you've got Calc BC under your belt and you're going into high school. So he personally was able to help these kids do some hardcore programming. Like they were using Python, but they were building the libraries themselves. They weren't allowed to use the libraries. They had to build the libraries. And he was like, they were doing master's and PhD level work in high school. And what they had basically figured out was like, you can go, if you have if you're very, very efficient about learning, you can go really far very, very quickly. Now this is what drew me to the program, which was, what does it mean for it to be efficient? Like, what does that like? Uh, how did you do that? And that's where, when you look at it, it's basically based on a number of cog-sci principles we know that we've known about for at least since the middle of the 20th century, and it kind of rests on a few ideas. So, um, the idea, first of all, that you have sort of a working memory capacity. So you can only we kind of heard the thing, like you can remember like seven, give or take two numbers, or you can remember four chunks of information. So you have a working memory capacity, and you also, if you've ever looked up anything about like spaced repetition or done any spaced repetition, if you are trying to learn, basically, when you learn something, the rate at which you forget it is going to be dependent upon how much the thing that you're doing is reinforced or reused. So you're probably never going to forget your phone number ever again, right? But you learn some random fact and you're going to forget it in 3 days if you don't use it. So the rate at which we forget things follows like a function, it's a forgetting curve. So spaced repetition is the idea is that if I can give you a dose of the thing that you want to know right before you forget it, that's like the optimal time to give you the dose. So we know that we know how to help people remember things. Like we know about the science of spaced repetition. We know about working memory capacity. And then so what are some conclusions we can have from that? Well, it's the idea that if you have, I can never say this word, but automaticity. So you, for example, you have automaticity in addition if you learn multiplication. You can't multiply actively unless you can, right? So the key is you need to have really, really fast retrieval on things that you learn to be able to go further. And the reason for that is because if you have very, very fast retrieval, if the information that you learned is accessible, you are not burdening your working memory capacity, which you need to onboard the new thing. So what they can end up doing is, what they did is like, in math, there's a hierarchy. It's like, if you learn, you know what prerequisites, there's a prerequisite graph. However, if you turn a prerequisite graph upside down, it's not symmetrical. There's another thing called an encompassing graph, which says, okay, if I've learned, if I review X, I have implicitly reviewed its children concepts, but it won't be an exact map of it as a prerequisite graph. Right? So what they did was, and this is where like you need domain expertise, but it's interesting. You think about it in any field, like think about it in our field, like in finance. If you had to build a encompassing graph, which said, if I reviewed the concept of X, what subchild context have I reviewed implicitly?
Mm.
Now contrast this with when you're learning words. Like let's say you're using spaced repetition or flashcards to learn words. The cards are uncorrelated. So by reviewing some set of words, you have not reviewed any other words. Like it's all uncorrelated. But hierarchical subjects like math don't work like that. So there is a efficiency gain that is possible by dosing somebody with the exact thing that they needed to review, which captured all the subchild things that they were weak on. So you can pick the exact right lesson to give at the exact right time that minimizes the forgetting. So, or right before they forgot it, you would dose them right there. That is the basis. It's like that CogSci stuff is the basis for how they built this. Now, none of this is possible with it. Like if you have one human tutor that just can map your knowledge perfectly, that they could actually dose you the right way. But it's really a technology problem. It's an and it's so what Math Academy is doing is it is mapping your knowledge as you are going through it. It's totally personalized, which is just something that technology has opened the door to. So that you can do this now, and it's whatever. It's like $50 a month for this thing. It's so cheap compared to if you needed to get like a personalized tutor. There's no other way to sort of get the same experience.
Right.
So what one is they did this in person, figured that or where they did the program in person with the kids with the technology, and then they've spent, I think I'm reading about it, Justin spent 3 years building the algorithm for how it would dose you and what it would and the encompassing graphs for every subject in math. I find the whole thing super interesting because I'm like, oh, this is what other things,
Yeah. Well,
math academy for X for Y, for,
well,
we're all
Chris, and we talked about Alpha School in Houston, not Houston, in
Austin.
Austin, right? That
Yeah.
has, because this is, with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, right? You alluded to the fact that you can grab this technology and accelerate learning, right? So a kid that's in sixth grade can be a PhD level in certain areas, and that's certainly one way to go. The way that I think schools like Alpha School have gone is said, look, we need the minimum effective dose to get to score high on math tests, which they're doing, using this technology so that the rest of the day can be spent on building a business, critical thinking, having fun, like doing all these other activities. Um, and they're able in a 2-hour period, it's called 2-hour learning, using some of this technology to teach all of the curriculum at the pace that is required for that child, just 2 hours a day, so that the other 4 to 5 hours are spent actually making money. Like, these kids are running Airbnbs, they're running their own. Like, a kid created a whole skating park and got the permits and got the money, got the loan, started running it, making money doing it. Like, that's an interesting way of approaching it, rather than saying, "Oh, you can learn faster. Let's get you to PhD level by the time you're 15, so that you can, be the best academic by the time you're 19." Right.
Right.
So I think that's super exciting. And it's going to, I think the kids that are able to do that, in my view, that are able to take some time to be critical thinkers and think outside the box and do something away from, because my kids, they got my wife's genes. They are incredibly creative. They love to build things on a front, write. They're incredible writers. They could care less about math. So I just need to get them through the minimum dose for math so that they can do their thing on the creative side. So anyway, I think this is just a brand new, a brave new world. It's going to be super exciting, and I think that some of the stuff that you've written has been useful for me to think through myself. Right. So if anybody's interested in kind of thinking through from a father's perspective, and some of the applications that you've had with kids, you should go to Moontower. Is it Moontower.com?
Moontowermeta.com,
Moontower
actually.
Meta. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to read some of those articles. And I did want to switch gears here for a quick second, because I can't. There's this one thing that's nagging at me, and I want to talk to an option person that has written on this. Is talking about options trading, and then what's available from professionally run options overlays in the ETF world. All right. So you recently wrote an article about JEPI, the JP Morgan Equity Premium Income ETF. And this is a very rules-based approach, right? A lot of these ETFs they tell you exactly what they're going to do. Maybe there's a little bit of, differences in the days that they trade and whatnot, but roughly speaking, we know what they're going to do. Um, and so your thoughts on what rules-based options trading in the ETF world is, and compare that to an options mandate where they can actually generate alpha. So what are your thoughts on JEPI? What do you think people are doing wrong?
Yeah. So I'll back up and say it's not. I don't think somebody's doing something wrong. I actually what I so if you put too many people into something, it's going to go wrong. But that's not specific to JEPI. That's just like if anything gets crowded compared to the capacity of which it should be run at, then the rubber hits the road at execution. And so if something gets crowded, you're telegraphing everything you're doing and you're cooked. I mean, it's just like market makers now, it's like if they're setting the table on the screens like a week before you come in, and they walk it down, you sell. I know, like, some of the some of the folks that I've, like, talked to on the front lines, it's like they laugh because sometimes those executions happen at, like, mid-market. And it's like, "Well, these guys sold, 25,000 options, like, mid?" It's like, "Well, yeah, because mid's not mid. Mid is it's been walked down for 3 days, so they know the order's coming, right?" Now, that's a problem when you get really large, um, and which is a subset of, like, a wider problem. It's like, I always say this thing, it's like markets are biology, not physics, right? It's like the system learns. We all know that. It's adaptive learning. I don't know, whatever those buzzwords are. So we know that the markets are adversarial and they adapt. So if you look at a time series, oh, this is like always worked. Well, it's not going to work if everybody knows it works. I mean, that's like the output becomes the input. Makes Why would you think that uh, nobody's learning here? So, but that's just a general problem with any kind of investment strategy. I actually think what's the way I would think about a product like that, and let's set aside the fact that like whatever they're doing, maybe you can do it cheaper, or maybe you can do it in a more custom way. I mean, there's always a trade-off between a customization and the fact that they're just going to give you this risk exposure in a rules-based way. Um, but I think as they build these things out, what I'm really thinking is like you could have imagine an ETF for every idea, and then you could sort of manage in between them. Like you think about it as like as a tool set. You're like, okay, well, I need a wrench, so I need the thing that sells calls because maybe I figured out that right now calls look expensive to me, and so I'm going to use the ETF that sells calls. Or maybe I think tails are cheap, so I'm going to go buy some tail or whatever the tail ETF is. And what you could do is like you just have all this product, and then what you would want is, I mean, this is like speaking my own book in a way, but it's like we're doing with the option software is trying to show you this is if you have a vol lens, this helps you see what's high and what's low. Now you can implement trades by actually going to the options market, trading the actual individual contracts, or the ETFs will be a way for you to just execute the same kind of idea. Now, are these things tax efficient and all that? Like there's larger questions that kind of hamper all product that exists. But conceptually, if the product is not too big and not so telegraphed in what it's doing, its existence is, I think, uh, overall good. If I would just and if it gets crowded, then you could take the other side of it. So you just short it. Right?
Right.
I mean, you could just harvest the management fee, I mean, you're harvesting their management fee, harvesting the fact that they have bad execution. I mean, you're just taking the other side of it. It's like if the thing gets short vol, it's like, hey, maybe I can get long vol by shorting your ETF. Uh, the other the issue there is like, you would expect again, markets are biology, not physics. You would expect the borrow to adjust. So I wouldn't be. I mean, I've never looked at it, but it would be interesting if like the borrow rate kind of varied with like what the sharps wanted to do. I don't know,
Yeah, well,
but
you did talk about, like, this concept of the shape of returns rather than a lot of the hard outcomes that we know actually happen in an options contract, right? If this happens and you get this payout. Is that part of kind of what Moontower.ai is trying to do? Like, trying to get a feel for the shape of the situation?
Well,
well,
give us the broad strokes on what Tower AI is doing, and then what kind of applications?
yeah. So, well, the way I think of it is it's a progression. It's to say, well, first of all, back up. The thing I like to remind people that like if you're vol traders are like this tiny, tiny corner of the overall investing landscape. Vol traders' entire business is to find volatility option contracts that are mispriced relative to one another. They're completely agnostic about the underlying. They have no idea of like what's going to happen to the market. They're just saying, I just have a view on the volatilities here, which is exact opposite. So what they do is like they assume the underlying is fair and that the options are mispriced. That's the foundational belief of their business, which is the exact opposite of everybody else that uses options. Whereas they have a view on the underlying, they have a macro view or fundamental view or whatever it is. They have a view about the underlying, and then they assume the options are fair. So what we're saying is, well, we can actually look cross sectionally at the options market and get some idea of, okay, this is a bunch of liquid names. This is how their parameters are being priced, things like term structure and skew, and their relationship between their implied volatility and their realized volatility. That's what it looks like. That's what normal looks like. And then all the things that are off the curves, so to speak, stick out to you on these kinds of charts. And you can say, well, I think now you have something to look at. You've now like you have a candidate list. You're like, "Hey, these things actually look like they could be mispriced." Now I have to bring context to bear on this. This thing looks high, but it could be high for a reason. So, I was not a quant or a systematic trader. I would use a funnel exactly like this, and then I would go and try to figure out, is this thing that looks high actually high, or are the generic metrics that we're using missing something that is very relevant right now? And so you have to bring your context to it. But what I like to do with this is say, well, I have a view on the market. Maybe you do have we're marrying both things. I have a view on the market. Like maybe I'm bullish. Where I mean, maybe I want to buy calls because I'm bullish. So where's the call skew cheap? Or where's the vol cheap? Maybe, or actually what I'd really do is say, what is expensive? What's a form of beta that's expensive in the marketplace? Like what's a name, either an index or a name like Apple, which I know has a lot of beta. It has a lot of representation in large indices. Say, okay, take Apple. Is Apple the cheapest place to get long market exposure? Like, then does it have the cheapest calls, or maybe it has the most expensive puts that I could sell if I'm bullish, and or maybe the calls are high but the vol is low, so then I could buy a call spread. So I buy the at the money and I'll sell the call. Whatever your bias is directionally, there is an options trade
Right.
as
And
long
it
as
can
they
be different
figure
every
out.
time.
It'll be different every time, but you got to figure out first, does the option look off? So we're saying, is the option off or not? Does it stand out? And if it stands out, there's a trade. No matter what your bias is, there's a trade. So and then that is, options are surgical tools. I mean, it's like, I talk about this all the time. Like if you look at a stock price, you have two stocks, they're both $100. One's a biotech stock that has, a 10% chance of being 10x, and that's why it's $100, 90% chance of being zero. And another stock is a symmetrical sort of outcome. It's like, it's 50% to be up or down 10%. But they're both $100. I mean, you know nothing from looking at the stock price. So if you want a three-dimensional view, a real understanding of the distribution, the options market tells you what it is. So you can kind of craft the shape of the trade you want to do there. In this case, in the options market, in the $100 biotech stock, the 300 call has a value because the stock's 10% to be worth 1,000. In the stock that does not have that kind of a distribution, the 300 call is worthless. Well, the options market will tell you what the distribution is. So you can be very surgical about, what is my thesis and what is the right trade to express my thesis. And the value of doing that is that it's the whole concept of, Augustin LeBron wrote that fantastic book, Laws of Trading. What's one of the core ideas? You only take the risks that you're being paid for. Only take the risks that you actually have a view on. You don't want this other basket of risks. So if you are trying to trade for alpha, you want to be very, very surgical. If if you're just trying to harvest a risk premium, like I just want to be long, half my portfolio is just going to be in passive long equities because just like I'm being paid for owning this stuff over a long period of time. You're not getting paid for your labor. You're just getting paid for patience there. Then fine, do that. But uh, if you want to actually control, or you think you have some kind of an edge on your views, then the trading the stock is a pretty blunt way to do it. Um, the options are more surgical, but if you don't actually understand what vol surfaces say, like this is the learning that you have to do. So you identified the problem. It's like, oh, I know that options are a more surgical tool, but I don't really understand options. And at the end of the day, what is the whole Moon Tower thing is like, well, I can teach you how to think about options, how to think with a vol lens. That's the whole idea behind it. So the tool is very much a progression of walking through. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there. I say that ours has a point of view. It's like, I'm
Mhm.
gonna take you from, you have this feeling, I'm going to walk you through how to think about this. Like if you think the stock market, like I kind of wrote a thread yesterday that people liked, but it was about the idea, like after the election, I think it would be normal to feel it's a normal sentiment that people feel bullish, whatever it is. Maybe the taxes are going to be lower, whatever. So people are all bulled up on the market. So if the market goes up, in my language, I would call that a stabilizing move. It's what's expected. If the market were to just tank 20%, this would be more shocking than
Not consensus.
normally would be for that. It's incredibly destabilizing. Nobody thinks that's going to happen. So if you translate to option language, that's your put skew is higher and the probability of the stock going higher is also higher. They're both higher. So that means your call spreads should be worth more. Your put skew should be worth more. So if if that's what the sentiment is, if we can look at that and say, well, what is the price for that package? Well, how does it look? What does it normally look like? What does it look like today? And if it's very, very cheap today, you have two choices. You could say, I'm going to buy it because I believe that this is true. You could also say, whoa, maybe my belief isn't so consensus because the options market seems to think something otherwise. So the option market is this great sparring partner because if you come to it with a thesis that is that with non-fuzzy thinking, you approach it and say, I actually have like a very specific way of seeing things. The options market will either agree or disagree. And if it disagrees, you may have a trade or you may have something to update your priors.
Got it.
So
And Moontower AI helps you. So is there a portion of education here, like an AI kind of asks you questions, asks you to think about things, or is it just about a visual inspection of the vol surface?
yeah, so the heart of it is a bunch of charts. What I was like, can the charts that have been the exact charts that I have been looking at for 15 years. The um And then the AI option is we built a chat bot that is trained on everything. Like basically it goes out every night on everything I've ever written. It ingests it. And so you can ask it options, like you can ask it any question about markets and it will give you a response and it will give you what like the references. It gives you a nice response that like you can say, hey, how do you compute forward vol? And it'll like teach you how to compute forward vol. And then it'll link to the article where it got that information
Mhm.
from. We actually, we're re-releasing it this month. Like we took it down and we're upgrading it. Where we're going with that is that chatbot is then going to connect to our data infrastructure. So then you'll be able to ask it a question like, hey, is put skew, uh, one thing in the option market is like when vols get really low, put skew tends to get very high as a percentage of the at the money vol. There's just some stickiness to out of the money puts that you wouldn't expect them to just get as cheap as the vol came in. So you could say something like, hey, conditioned on vol being below 12, what percentile is the put skew in rather than on the unconditioned version of it? So that's like the kind of question I would like to just ask the robot. It just gives me it gives me the answer, it gives me the chart. It's basically what you'd want an intern to be able to do. And we would just want to automate that.
You finally
Yeah.
replaced yourself, Chris. That's
Oh, I
well
cannot
done.
wait to replace myself.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Totally.
All
That's
right.
a good use case. I like that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Adam. I know you need to get hopping, so I really appreciate your time, Chris. Anything that we missed that you want to talk about with regards to product or?
The only thing I would say is, I really want people to check it out. I think that we are doing something that just does not exist. It has a point of view that doesn't exist. And if you're, it's not, if you're familiar with the Moon Tower, writing and all that already, you can expect more of the same. It's very, very, we try to be super thoughtful and, be, uh, it's, we really try to make things as simple as possible without losing the nuance that is in options. I mean, I think I know at the end of the day that everyone wants to just be like, is it red or green, man? And I'm like, I, 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 I never thought like that. That everything is like thinking probabilistically, and we try to bring that through. And I hope that even if you don't trade options, this is the big thing. We offer a lot of free stuff on it. Even if you're not paying, you can get access to all the education. There's a primer in there. There's two different learning documents, and I strongly believe that no matter what you do investing, um, these documents will totally upgrade your thinking. So at the very least, I think that's a great thing for people to check out.
Awesome. And that's Moontower.ai, right? Where can people find you on social?
I'm on Twitter at Kris Abdelmessih, KrisAbdelmessih. And yeah, that's pretty much the only thing I do on social.
Fantastic. All right, Kris, thank you again so much for sharing your thoughts, and good luck on the Moon
I
Tower
wish we had a
venture.
lot more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Next
we can
time, man.
bring you again. Once you have that updated robot, we can just chat with that robot and have your
That's right.
avatar bobbing
Yeah.
around.
Well, maybe I'll get a hologram of myself on there. Maybe.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I
I'll,
would
I'll
love
have
it.
I won't have the gray hair when that happens. I'll use a
Yeah, we'll
younger
get an
picture.
update.
Yeah.
Full upgrade. Beautiful. All right. Thank you,
Good to
Kris.
see you, man.
Good to see
All
you.
right. Likewise. Thank you guys so much.
All right. We'll chat soon. See ya.
All right. Later.
I did want to take a quick second to remind our listeners that the team works really hard on these podcasts. We spent a lot of hours trying to get the right guests, and we do a lot of prep work to make sure that we're asking the right questions. So if you do have a second, just do hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share with friends if you find what we're doing useful.